Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're looking at the experiences of an author who went through some really intense medical trauma and then her journey to heal and to really discover herself.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case. It's right where like physical health and spiritual experience kind of meet, you know what I mean? And it's not just about, treating symptoms or anything like that. It's more about like the author's journey to figure out like what her illness really meant and how to tap into like her own inner healing.
Yeah, and that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, right? We're not just talking about medicine or anything. We're going way deeper than that. The author talks about these visions she has of a healing white light, and it happens when she faints from a blood disorder. Can you imagine that? Like your body's talking to you through these crazy images,
Right.
trying to tell you how to heal yourself.
Totally. It's like her subconscious is giving her a map, to connect her struggles with her body to like a deeper spiritual understanding of who she is. It makes you think about how connected like your mind, body, and spirit really are.
For sure. So let's start with just how intense this author's medical journey was.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking meningitis sepsis, Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome, all that when she was only 16. Skin grafts, muscle loss, they even had to deal with exposed bones. It's hard to even wrap your head around.
And then on top of all that, she had to deal with ITP for like 20 years. That means constantly having these super low platelet counts, ending up in the hospital all the time, and always being afraid that her body would just give up. It's pretty amazing that she not only survived all that, but she's actually thriving.
It really is. But here's where things get kind of wild. During these times when she would faint, she kept seeing this flowing white light. It wasn't just like a picture in her head either.
Hmm.
There was this message with it telling her to let the healing light flow through me and heal my body. It's like a call to action, straight from her deeper self.
And the crazy thing is, she just went with it,
Mhm.
you know? Trusted her gut. She imagined the light going through her, and she actually started to feel changes, sweating her senses, going haywire, and then finally she'd be back to normal. It's like a textbook example of how the mind and body are connected.
But as crazy as those early episodes were, they were also terrifying for her. The fainting was unpredictable. She was afraid her body wouldn't bounce back. It was a lot to handle. She felt like she had to stay alive, but she also knew that something wasn't adding up between what her gut was telling her and what the doctors were saying.
That kind of struggle between regular medicine and what your intuition tells you is something we see a lot in these stories about healing and transformation. It's that feeling that you need to look at things more holistically. The author calls it spiritual medicine. It's like adding that to regular treatment. Like she needed to understand healing in a bigger way. She knew that being healthy wasn't just about her body, it was about her emotions and spirit, too. And that's what led her to writing. It was her way to deal with the trauma, to find that healing light again, and to feel connected to something bigger.
Writing became her safe space, her way to explore her inner world and all the connections between her spiritual and physical experiences. That's how she realized she needed to break down what she called her egoic matrix. It's like all those thoughts and beliefs we have that hold us back from healing and growing.
So instead of just trying to fix her body, she started working on herself from the inside out. She wanted to get rid of those beliefs that were holding her back and rebuild herself with infinite capacity and real love. It's a big idea, right? Realizing that to truly heal, you got to go deeper than just fixing the symptoms. You have to look at the root cause.
Exactly. It's like understanding that your thoughts, beliefs, and feelings all affect how healthy you are. The author knew that to really heal, she had to change things from the inside out to make room for something new and better, like cleaning out the junk drawer to make space for something new and awesome. And when she really committed to writing and figuring herself out, she started to notice some pretty big changes in her body, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like all that work she was doing on the inside started to show on the outside. She started feeling this intense heat in her chest, especially at night. It was so bad that she was sweating like crazy at night and then freezing during the day. It's almost like her body was doing this massive energy cleanse, getting rid of years of stress and trauma.
It's a crazy image, right? All that heat and sweat for months. It's like a physical sign of all the deep work she was doing on herself.
Yeah,
It's kind of freaky, but also fascinating.
it's definitely intense. And you're right, it wasn't just a quick thing. This sweating went on for like 70 months, almost 6 years. It was a long and intense transformation. It took serious commitment and willpower.
70 months of sweating like crazy.
That's wild. What did the author think about all this? Did she have any idea what was going on? Well, at first she started looking online for answers. She was searching for anything that could explain why she had this fireball heat in her chest when sleeping. It sounds kind of desperate, like she needed to know that she wasn't imagining things.
That makes sense, though, right? When something this weird is happening to you, you want to know if anyone else has gone through it. You want to know that you're not alone.
Exactly. And for her, that internet search led her to the idea of chakras, specifically the heart chakra.
So it wasn't just some random thing happening in her body. It was connected to this whole energy system.
Exactly. She'd heard of chakras before, but this time it was personal. She could actually feel the energy of her heart chakra. It wasn't just an idea anymore, it was real.
That's a huge shift, isn't it? To go from knowing about something to actually feeling it. It makes it so much more real.
Totally. And it's important to remember that she didn't just believe everything she read about chakras. She knew about the history and the spiritual side of it, but she always went back to what she felt in her own body. She trusted her intuition more than anything.
That's so important.
Yeah.
Even when you're learning about something that's been around forever, you got to make it your own.
Exactly. You got to find what feels right for you. And that's what she did. She took the idea of chakras and used it in her meditation and visualization. It helped her connect with herself even more.
So writing became her way to process everything, to connect with her soul, and to heal. And all that heat and sweating, it was like a physical sign of all the energy shifting inside her.
Like her body was literally sweating out the past, making space for something new.
And through it all, she kept writing. It was her way to deal with everything, to let go of old patterns and to heal. It sounds like she really tapped into the power of being creative to transform herself.
Exactly. It's like writing became her spiritual practice, her way to understand and use the wisdom she was finding inside. And as she kept going, she had another big realization. She realized that it was her ego, the part of her that wanted to be in control that was actually fighting against the healing. Like her mind was pushing back against her soul, trying to become whole again.
So she wasn't just trying to get rid of old beliefs. She had to realize that her ego was scared of change. Even change that would be good for her.
Exactly. It happens all the time when people are trying to heal. The ego needs to feel sure about things, needs to be in control, so it sees any big change as a threat. It wants to stick with what it knows, even if it's making her suffer.
That makes sense. It's
That's
like
right.
our brains are programmed to stay away from anything unknown, even if it could be better.
So what did the author do about her ego pushing back?
She surrendered. Not in like a giving up kind of way, but in a way that took a lot of courage. She knew that fighting her ego would just make things worse. Instead, she just watched it, acknowledged its fears, and kind of gently guided it towards understanding what was happening.
So she was being kind to herself. She understood that her ego was just trying to protect her, even if it was doing it the wrong way.
Exactly. And by surrendering, by letting go of the ego's controls, she was able to really trust. Trust in the process. Trust her body's wisdom. Trust that the healing would happen. Speaking of trust, let's go back to those fainting spells for a minute. She mentioned that they happened a lot throughout her life, especially when her platelet count was low. It's almost like her body was forcing her to slow down, to pay attention to what was going on inside.
It's an interesting way to look at it, isn't it? Maybe those fainting spells weren't just medical problems. Maybe they were her subconscious trying to break through and tell her something important.
Like a wake-up call, right? To remind her that there was something deeper going on.
Exactly. And it was in those moments when she was vulnerable, when her mind was quiet, that she could experience that healing white light.
So even when she seemed weak, something powerful was happening spiritually. Makes you think about illness differently, doesn't it? Maybe even when you're struggling physically, you can still be growing and changing spiritually.
Absolutely. And it shows how important it is to be open to different ways of healing. It might not always be a straight line to feeling better. There might be setbacks and weird experiences that don't make sense.
That's a good point. We tend to think healing should be straightforward, but the author's story shows us that it's usually way more complicated.
Exactly. And it shows us that we need to surrender to the process, to trust that even when things feel messy, there's something bigger at work.
It's about letting go of trying to control everything and letting something bigger guide us, whether you call it intuition, your soul, or whatever. And for the author, surrendering meant accepting those crazy physical feelings, the heat, the sweating, and trusting that it was all part of her transformation.
It's amazing how she talks about those feelings like a purging, getting rid of old patterns and energy that she didn't need anymore. Like her body was literally sweating out the past to make room for something new.
And it reminds us that healing isn't always easy or comfortable. Sometimes you have to face your fears and let yourself be changed.
Yeah, it can be like a detox, not just for your body, but for your mind and spirit too. And the fact that she had those night sweats for almost 6 years shows just how deep and long that process was.
It wasn't a quick fix. It was a huge change that took commitment and a willingness to face the unknown. And it's amazing that the sweating finally stopped. It's like her body knew when it was done, when it had let go of everything it needed to.
It shows how wise our bodies are, how they can heal and take care of themselves if we give them the chance.
And through all of this writing was so important for the author. It was how she processed her experiences, connected with her soul, and ultimately healed.
It's a perfect example of how being creative can help you heal and change. Writing let her tap into her subconscious to express her fears and dreams and to get all those intense feelings out.
It's like she was taking something invisible and making it real, bringing her unconscious thoughts into the light through writing. And by doing that, she could understand things better, let go of what wasn't serving her, and find her power again. So what do you think is the biggest takeaway for our listeners from the author's journey so far?
I think for me, it's that reminder that we can all heal and change. We all have that power inside us. It might not always be easy or look how we think it should, but we can do it. Yeah, I totally agree. The author's story proves that. It also shows that healing isn't just one thing. It's not just about your body, it's about your emotions and your spirit, too.
It's about seeing how your mind, body, and spirit are all connected and healing all of them. And it's pretty amazing that she trusted her gut even when it went against what the doctors were saying.
That's so important. We're always told to listen to the experts, doctors, therapists, even people who write self-help books. But her story shows that we need to listen to ourselves, too, to that feeling inside that tells us what's right.
It's about taking charge of our own healing instead of just letting things happen to us. And for her, that meant paying attention to those intense feelings, the heat, the sweating, and seeing them as part of her transformation.
That's a whole different way of thinking, isn't it? She didn't see those things as bad. She saw them as messages, as guides on her journey to becoming whole. She let herself feel everything, trusting that it would lead her to a good place.
And that's where surrendering comes in again, right? It's about letting go of control, trust in the journey, and letting something bigger guide us.
You got it. It's about knowing that we don't have all the answers. Sometimes the best healing happens when we stop trying to figure everything out. It's about being open to the mystery and letting our bodies and souls surprise us.
And it's interesting that she went online to look for answers. She actually searched for fireball heat in her chest when sleeping. It sounds kind of funny, but I bet she was feeling desperate. She wanted to connect with other people who might understand.
We all need to know that we're not alone, especially when weird things are happening. And for her, that search helped her learn about the heart chakra. It gave her a way to understand what she was feeling.
So it wasn't just a random Google search. It was her way of connecting her own experience to something bigger.
Exactly. It shows that learning new things can help us heal. It's about taking in information, figuring out what feels right, and using it to understand our own journey.
And by continuing to learn to write and to surrender, the author found her way back to love and feeling whole. It wasn't easy. It was messy, hard, and sometimes scary. But she came out stronger with a deeper understanding of herself and how she's connected to something bigger.
Her story shows how strong the human spirit is, how powerful surrendering can be, and how we all have the potential to change. It reminds us to embrace our own healing journeys, to trust our bodies and souls, and to remember that even when things are tough, there's always light.
That's a great way to put it. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question. What if we looked at our own experiences, our feelings, even our creativity, with the same curiosity and openness as the author? What would we discover? What could we change? The answers are inside you. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep trusting your heart and body. That's all for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.